I've been using something that many women have never heard of, but honestly, I think more of us should. If you're new here, my whole mission is to help women navigate the often confusing world of perimenopause and the many health challenges that can pop up as we age. That means sharing tools that actually help with things like pain, inflammation, hormone shifts, and even autoimmune conditions. And this one, it's called Low Dose Naltrexone, or LDN. Now, if your joints ache, your body feels puffy and inflamed, maybe your doctor told you there's nothing we can do for your autoimmune symptoms, or you're just tired of feeling off and dismissed, LDN might be worth knowing about. Now, I used it years ago for pain and recently decided to restart it. And now I'm back on it, and I'm remembering just how powerful this tiny tool can be, especially when inflammation is high and hormones are in flux. And if you are the kind of woman who's into learning more about under the radar tools for hormone health and inflammation, especially if you're in perimenopause, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm always testing out new things so you don't have to waste time on what doesn't work. Now, what exactly is naltrexone? Naltrexone was originally developed to help people with alcohol and opioid dependence. It's prescribed in higher doses, around 50 milligrams, to reduce cravings and block the effects of those substances. Now, a little quick note here. It's not the same as naloxone, which is also known as Narcan, which is used in emergency situations to reverse an overdose. But here's where things get really interesting. When you take very low doses of naltrexone, we're talking 0.5 to 4.5 milligrams, it works completely different. Instead of blocking your body's receptors like it does at high doses, low dose naltrexone actually helps your body make more of its own natural feel-good chemicals like endorphins. And those endorphins, they don't just help with our mood, they also help calm inflammation and can regulate the immune system. So for women dealing with things like chronic pain, autoimmune issues, or that vague inflamed feeling that many of us have during perimenopause, this little dose can have a huge impact. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know I consider myself a bit of a biohacker. I like to try things out on myself before I ever recommend them. So when my personal joint pain started creeping back in and I felt like my inflammation was up a bit, despite eating my usual clean diet and supplements, I decided to revisit a tool that I hadn't used in years, which is this low dose naltrexone. So I did start using it again for pain, but not just for pain. The more I dug into the research on LDN, the more I realized how many symptoms in perimenopause are tied to low-grade inflammation, like brain fog, joint pain, mood swings, sleep disturbances, even food cravings. I've also been experimenting with peptides recently, and between that and the hormone shifts that I'm undergoing personally, I knew my body needed extra anti-inflammatory support. So again, I added back the LDN, as usual, starting low and going slow. So how does something so tiny actually make a difference? Let me explain in super simple terms. Low dose naltrexone works in two big ways. First, it briefly blocks some of the body's opioid receptors, the ones that respond to natural feel-good chemicals like endorphins. Because of that temporary block, your body goes, wait a second, we need more of those. So it starts making more endorphins on its own, which can help with pain, mood, and resilience to stress. Second, it helps calm down an overactive immune system, the kind that shows up in things like chronic inflammation or even autoimmune conditions. There's a specific part of your immune system that can go into overdrive and start attacking your own tissues. That's often what causes things like joint pain, brain fog, or even flares in autoimmunity. LDN helps quiet that system down. So the result, less inflammation, less pain, and more balance. Which is why I often think of it as a reset button for women whose bodies feel like they're working against them. Now, I personally used to prescribe this to all the women in my practice with Hashimoto's, But now, 11 years later, I realize there are so many other benefits to taking it. So here's the thing. Low dose naltrexone is considered off-label. That simply means it's not FDA approved for these specific uses like autoimmune symptoms or hormone-related inflammation. But that does not mean it's unsafe or experimental. Doctors prescribe meds off-label all the time. For example, metformin is often used off-label for PCOS, not just diabetes. Trazodone, originally an antidepressant, is now widely used off-label for sleep. I've personally used that in the past. And propranolol, a blood pressure medication, is used off-label for things like anxiety and migraines. As a matter of fact, I was prescribed propranolol at 17 for migraine headaches. Now, because LDN is off-label, you typically won't find it at your regular pharmacy in the low doses we're talking about. Instead, it's often compounded, meaning a specialty pharmacy makes it in a custom dose, like 1.5 or 3 milligrams. And that's where some women hit a roadblock. Your regular doctor may not be familiar with LDN or may not feel comfortable prescribing it. That's where working with someone like me, a functional medicine doc who's trained in personalized protocols, can really make a difference. I look at the whole picture: your hormones, inflammation, immune function, gut health, even cravings. And on that note, I am currently booking complimentary strategy calls for September. So if you are dealing with things like pain, inflammation, or autoimmune issues in perimenopause, and if you're wondering if something like LDN could help you, this is a great place to start. So I'll be sure to put the link in the description to book a call. I'd love to learn more about what you're struggling with and see if I can help you map out a strategy that actually works for your body. So when I started LDN, I began at 1.5 milligrams. And this is what it looks like. And just like the last time I used it, I did experience some vivid dreams in the beginning. Some of them were actually a little unpleasant, but I wasn't having them every single night. And the good news, they resolved within, I think, the first week. After that, I bumped up to 3 milligrams, which is 2 of these capsules. And I've been taking 3 milligrams now for a few nights, and I've actually been sleeping really well. I do still notice more dreaming than usual, but they're not disturbing at all this time around. They're just vivid. So if you're someone who tends to be more sensitive to medications or supplements, you're not alone. But in most cases, these kind of side effects are temporary as your body adjusts to this new medication, especially if you start low and go slow. So my personal plan is to stay at 3 milligrams for about 10 days total and then increase to 4.5 milligrams if everything continues to go smoothly. And this is the maximum dose for LDN. As always, LDN isn't for everyone, especially those taking opioids or with liver issues. But overall, it's one of the more gentle and well-tolerated tools I've used personally and with my clients. Now, LDN is typically recommended to be taken at night since that's when your body naturally produces more endorphins. But if you're someone who's sensitive and you're having dreams or sleep disruptions and they're a little too much for you, you can take it earlier in the day. That can be super helpful, and that's actually something I've recommended to my clients in the past who've been sensitive to LDN. Other possible side effects include mild insomnia or restlessness, maybe headaches, nausea. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not recommended for anyone currently taking opioid medications or with significant liver issues. But overall, again, it's one of the better tolerated tools I've seen, especially when you start low and go slow. So if you're perimenopausal or postmenopausal and you're dealing with things like joint or muscle pain, Hashimoto's or another autoimmune condition, maybe hormone-related inflammation, or even cravings for things like sugar or alcohol that feel tied to your mood or your cycle, low-dose naltrexone might be worth asking your doctor about. Just like any tool, it's not a one-size-fits-all, but it's something I personally consider often when I'm working with women who feel stuck, inflamed, and like nothing else is working. So let me know in the comments, have you ever heard of LDN before? Or have you tried it? And again, if you're curious about whether something like this might help you, I do have a few one-on-one strategy call spots still available for September. We'll talk about your symptoms, what you're currently doing, and whether working together so I can help you develop a personalized plan is the right next step for you. And with that, we'll see you right back here next week. Ciao.